All right, so our next speaker also comes from Seattle, and we had a group of us went down to a conference in Phoenix on participatory democracy last month, and we actually got to hear our next speaker speak, and we were really excited by what she had to say there, so we knew we had to have her here. Our next speaker is Amy Nguyen. She's the program manager for participatory budgeting program, Your Voice, Your Choice, Parks and Streets at the Seattle Department of Neighborhoods. Her experience in policy analysis, nonprofit management, and community organizing spans New York City, New Orleans, and Seattle. Before joining the Department of Neighborhoods, Amy served as a legislative aide for the City of Seattle council member, where she advised on policy issues related to planning, land use, parks, utilities, immigration, and civil rights. I'm remembering to speak slower. Prior to her time at City Hall, Amy worked as the program manager for APACE, Asian Pacific Islander Americans of Civic Empowerment, and was responsible for developing programming to increase access, electoral participation, civic engagement in diverse AAPI communities. Amy has also worked giving free legal on a free legal hotline for the Louisiana Civic Justice Center, and as a project manager for the Emmy Award-winning documentary Herman's House. Amy received her degree in a master's degree in urban policy and an undergraduate degree in urban studies from the New School in New York. She loves hand-pulled noodles, Octavia Butler, videos of red pandas, place in space, pretending to be Salvador Dali, making pasta, ginkgo leaves, and fantasizing about open mics. So here's Amy coming to the mic now.
It's true, I do love all of those things. All right. And I drop things, clearly. All right, well, thank you so much for allowing me to address you today. And thank you to Jim and all the organizers and the fantastic speakers that I get to be here with today. I know I'm gonna address the elephant in the room right away. What were you thinking, Seattle? Why aren't you still Youth Voice, Youth Choice? Am I right? Can we have another applause for Becky and Jess? That was just amazing. And it's that question, right? Like, what is the evolution from Youth Voice, Youth Choice to, yes, we're very clever, your voice, your choice? And it's actually something that is entirely unsatisfactory. It comes down to a very bureaucratic reasoning, and it comes down to funding. So kind of on that note, what I'm going to be offering you today is really the implementer perspective, the practitioner perspective. And then kind of building off of what Brian said, I'm gonna leave the political will and the kind of buy-in to the next speaker, Jamal Fox. So to get this started, so the City of Seattle's Participatory Budgeting Initiative is currently Your Voice, Your Choice, Parks and Streets. This is the, wow, that font is so small. I also just have to tell you guys, we are required at the City of Seattle to use a text called Seattle Text that doesn't seem to work on any other PowerPoint, so I just feel like I should have just scrapped the whole Seattle text. But so I will do my best to read what is there so that you can see it a little bit better. Well, hear it a little bit better. So Your Voice, Your Choice, Parks and Streets is a participatory budgeting initiative in which anyone who lives, works, goes to school, receives services in the City of Seattle can participate. We are currently a $3 million program for 2018. In 2017, we were a $2 million program. So just to kind of emphasize the who can participate, we wanted to recognize that the City of Seattle is, similar to Portland, experiencing affordable housing crises that are pushing folks outside of city limits. So it was very important for us to emphasize that you don't have to live in Seattle to have ties and commitments to transforming this city for the betterment of us all. Thus, the where you live, work, go to school, receive services is our line. As I said, we're 3 million, and this is the third year of the Parks and Streets focus, the second year of the Parks and Streets focus. All right, and just to give you a little bit more context, and it was kind of hit on a bit, what makes Seattle very interesting in terms of a US approach to participatory budgeting is we're actually housed within the executive. So I work for the Department of Neighborhoods, and we administer Your Voice, Your Choice. Now, as you heard, we oftentimes in a US context refer to Chicago and New York, as New York is the largest participatory budgeting program. Now, when you have a system that is driven by elected officials, you also see that it's can be rather uneven. You have folks that actually get elected upon this. So one of the really strong pros in a Seattle approach, being housed within, driven from a department, housed within the executive, is we really look at the city as a whole in our engagement, in our design, in our strategy. I love the Department of Neighborhoods. I understand that there's some Portland neighborhood staff in the room as well. Can I get a hands? Awesome. You guys do fantastic work. We're going to talk. All right. So one of the kind of core tenets of DON is really outreach and engagement. And more than outreach and engagement, it is equity as our guiding principle. So I have so much City of Seattle pride. We have been a leader in the country for quite a while in, as a city, our Race and Social Justice Initiative, which is really mandated across our entire city. So this is really the structure and context in which we've developed and designed this program, is leading with equity, and not just saying equity, leading with race, right? Which is to call out and name that we need to center communities of color within this work. And so I'm not going to get too much into the history, as we heard a fantastic presentation about Youth Voice, Youth Choice, where a big thing to kind of point out is $700,000. Our second year was $2 million. We're in a $3 million period. And we hope that our numbers and metrics will make the case that we can grow and see this become something much larger than it currently is. All right. So just a look back at 2017, the first year of Your Voice, Your Choice. And I also have our full report that I will put at the front table if you're interested in kind of learning more about our numbers. This is a very small map of the city of Seattle. If you're not familiar, we have 7 city council districts. And so this is our kind of map of participation by district. As a whole, we collected 894 ideas. This was collected online and in person at events. And you know, one thing to note about this 894 figure, and I'll kind of bring this up too, just because I want you to frame this entire presentation within the context that participatory budgeting is a brilliant tool, but if we do not have structure, if we don't have a goal, which is to ultimately direct resources to communities of color and other under-resourced communities, then what is the point, right? So I'll be frank, that 894 ideas submitted, and you'll see this in our report, came from predominantly white folks, and online participation is dominated by white women of varying ages, right? And you'll find in our in-person submissions and paper submissions where we targeted events and went to community-based organizations, nonprofit service providers, is where we have more engagement with communities of color. And then our last year numbers in terms of project development, which is kind of a departure from Youth Voice, Youth Choice, where there are budget delegates. We don't have budget delegates in Your Voice, Your Choice. Anybody can come to meetings, and they help to actually prioritize the ideas that were submitted. So we had 263 unique participants in that process that had about 28 meetings across the city. These are 2-hour meetings. And then we move into the voting phase where we had a little under 8,000 folks voting, and this is also online and in person. And that ultimately ended in funding 33 projects. And again, this is park and street improvements. And so just some key takeaways, and I'm going to tee this up as a way to really direct the conversation into where we are now and what does it mean for us to be a program that is for everyone, right? And that's that word, we are for everyone, but what does it look like in terms of our outcomes and metrics, and how do we, again, direct resources to areas and folks that haven't traditionally, historically received resources and investment. So, okay, just very straightforward, we had 2 million. We have a district-based system. We actually divided that 2 million equally across the districts. So each district got $285,000 for park and street improvements. Now, I think we all know that diagram of the fence, you know, with the boxes and the kids standing at different levels. I did not include that. I think that's a PowerPoint cliche. But just explaining that, we know it, right? So after we made this decision, as you can imagine, in the response to communities is, that's not equity. That's that 90s equality stuff, right? That doesn't make sense. We know that areas across the city have different levels of investment. And we knew moving into 2018 that that was unacceptable. We cannot, again, our structure start by dividing equally, right? But what we did do last year was we emphasized outreach within districts 1, 2, and 5, where are actually higher levels of communities of color. So we did do more outreach and engagement. The other thing is, you know, this is kind of the setup for it. I wish that, let me phrase this better. I wish that I could say as practitioners and as government employees, we had more time to do it. We never have enough time to implement these programs, and there is so much administrative need. I should have also said that we're a program staff of 2. I have one other colleague, so there are 2 people, and this is only half of my job. So if you just think about that, 1.5 staff members to do everything, right, is kind of insane. Burnout is real. Yeah. Let me just mull over that one for a moment. All right, so yes, we're here on a Saturday also, so let's get this energy up, you know? Participatory budgeting has to be fun. If there are future people in this room that are going to be participatory budgeting practitioners, anybody who does this work will tell you you have to find the light in it because it will destroy you if you do not. Because this is hard work. Outreach and engagement is not easy. All right, so that was 2017, and moving into 2018, when I was thinking about redesigning this program, some of the core questions that me and my colleague Craig thought about is, how do we structure a program serving the entire city, emphasizing participation for all, but centering communities of color? How should funding be distributed among and within 7 city council districts? How do we engage current advocates while encouraging new participation? We decided to do something rather radical with our very small budget. We said, we're going to compensate our steering committee, and we're going to do more than just do some little stipend. We're going to compensate our steering committee members like they deserve to for their time and expertise. What that means is we compensate our steering committee members $50 an hour. We compensate them $50 an hour because, yes, pay people. Always pay people. We do that because another component of our program is we compensate community liaisons, which help us do our work in language that come from the communities that we want to serve. And we also, as a market standard, compensate them $50 an hour. That's a program that's administered through the Department of Neighborhoods. And what happens when you put out an application where you actually compensate the people that are on the committee? We have 10 steering committee members. They are all people of color. We have an entirely People of Color Steering Committee, we have one fantastic woman who, and you can go to the City of Seattle website and see their full bios because I won't do it justice. We have one woman who is Native, a veteran, experiencing homelessness, and she applied because nobody knows parks and streets better than she does. She has to live in them, she knows them, and she doesn't want anybody telling whatever structure or system this program has who doesn't have that experience. Those are the kinds of voices that we have telling us what to do. We have a gentleman who has been previously incarcerated, who has pulled himself out in a way like his story, I'm like, we don't deserve you, man. I look at him regularly, I'm like, Omari, I don't know how we got you, but I'm so glad that you're here. But that's just it. And the other piece of, okay, so we have this stacked steering committee of so much powerful voices. How are we going to leverage them and actually utilize them? We have to give them power. So this goes back to that funding piece. I told you in 2017, we were a $2 million program that we divided equally across the 7 districts. The City Council gave us an additional $1 million. We knew that additional $1 million could not be distributed equally again. The steering committee is deciding how that additional $1 million is going to be spent. That is their directive. They get that power. We're listening to them. The other piece that the steering committee is doing apart from that decision of how funding is going to be distributed and allocated is they are advising us on all of the programmatic phases. So that's helping us with our outreach and engagement plan and making key recommendations to be implemented in our 2019 cycle. They also co-facilitated a project development meeting in the neighborhood that they felt most connected to. And just to refresh you, our project development meetings are the 2-hour meetings that happen across the city. And this year we had 32 of them in 5 weeks. Again, that's 2 staff. We all have to be there. Yes, I had 16 meetings in 5 weeks. That's crazy. All right. Yeah, that's more on that's the steering committee. What other interventions did we make going into 2018, knowing that we have to do better as practitioners? We really focused on building new partnerships. One of the key tenets of the Department of Neighborhoods, and we always say this, is we have to meet people where they're at. And that means reevaluating, looking at who we're working with, who our partners are. And, you know, this goes back to that question of how do we have a program that encourages participation for all but centering communities of color. So we created and established new partnerships with nonprofits, community-based organizations, service providers, and hosted meetings there on site within their programming. You know, we put more of our budget in all of our program phases for limited English proficiency, so we expanded our in-language to 5 languages. We're in Spanish, Vietnamese, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese, Arabic, and Somali. And we also use community liaisons to do that engagement in person. For idea collection this year, 2018, we did online idea collection in Spanish and English, and then we had those 5 languages available in paper form. Proud to say, for the first time ever, we actually did our project development, which is, again, those 2-hour engagement meetings in language. We did it in English, Spanish, and Arabic, which was really cool. That's something that is awesome that we can say. And so we collaborate with the Seattle Public Library, Seattle Public Schools, City Council, but again, I think the biggest thing was really moving us to going to the places like working with our Seattle Housing Authority, working with housing providers to have these meetings about parks and streets in areas where folks don't even think that they have a voice or engagement in this process. So, all right, and the last point that I'm going to bring into what kind of design, when we were redesigning, what really came to the forefront. And again, we hear this from communities of color. They're like, we're tired of telling you guys the same thing. We tell you all the time that you need to do better. You guys have the data, why don't you use it? So that's just it. We wanted to lead with data, and we have some fantastic studies that the City of Seattle and our different departments have done. What you'll see to the right, this is our access to opportunity map that our Office of Planning and Community Development created. So what you're seeing is the red zones have lower access to opportunity, obviously, and the lighter colors have higher. And this is really correlating everything from graduation rates, class, race. And so this is one of those, like, we know where we need to emphasize and do our outreach and engagement. Oh, there's a pointer here. I guess I could do this. I wanted to kind of Vanna White it a little bit, but. All right, and then the map to the left is actually taken from our Office of Sustainability and Environment. Now, we are a Parks and Streets emphasis participatory budgeting, and we knew that you can't talk about parks and streets without thinking about how infrastructure investments must be couched within a larger environmental discourse. But we also know that the environmental discourse is very much dominated by a white voice. Our Office of Sustainability and Environment has done fantastic work in launching an equity and environment initiative that is led by communities of color. So we wanted to build off of that work and apply their analysis to our program. Oh, God, I gotta move faster. All right, so it's a little bit confusing. The purple is actually the quartile that needs more attention. So anyways, all right. So early results, so what I can share from you for 2018, we launched January 2nd of this year, and we had a total of 1,421 ideas. So we have grown, we received about a couple hundred more ideas for Park and Street improvements. That moved us into our project development, which we conducted from February 23rd to March 28th, which consisted of 32 meetings where we had 562 participants, 515 unique, so we doubled our numbers, and we're pretty proud of that. All right, and I'm just gonna share really quickly some of the results that we've had thus far just this year. This is one that we're really proud of. We've had over 70% of new participants in the idea collection phase. This is the idea collection demographics by age. One thing to note is that, traditionally, historically, we always have the highest kind of participation from the 50 and above. So we actually saw growth within this 25 to 30 that we're actually pretty excited about. And this is the one that we need to do improvement on. And this is one of those, I think that we can, maybe in the equity conversation, have this further, and this is where City of Seattle and Portland, we both know this, we have a housing crisis, we have a homelessness crisis, and it's racialized, right? So right now, as you can see, we had 80% participation from white folks. Again, that was predominantly online. Our in-person engagement, which is more targeted to communities of color, is where we have more participation. Yes, this is actually better than last year. I know that's surprising, but you can see the full report before. So, all right, project development, our in-person statistics. Again, we had over 60% of new folks come into the program, which we're very excited about. And age demographics are pretty similar to idea collection. It's a lot of time commitment to ask folks to come for 2 hours, and I can have a long conversation about how we can try to start to remove those barriers and obstacles. If you have the answers, please tell me. Oh yeah, again, we're still in this zone here. So, it's our third year, and for me, I am the Community Program Strategic Advisor. My colleague Craig is our Program Coordinator. And I think if I can end with anything and leave you with anything is that as practitioners of participatory budgeting, as city employees, we are accountable to the people. And that means that it is upon us to constantly improve our processes. And that's the commitment that we make. This program is still in its infancy. We're literally in our second year, and we have put an emphasis on collecting data and metrics to make data-driven decisions, but also putting people in positions of power so that we remain accountable to communities of color. So in essence, I'm hopeful because we have an amazing steering committee that will tell us what to do. But also, we have to do stuff as well. All right, thank you.